Okay, we are back in the tier list format. You know what? I'm actually really bothered by this color scheme here. I feel like we need like a blue. Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't matter that much. Color scheme doesn't matter. So I'm going to be doing a partner tier list for Thousand Year Door, but since there's only 7 partners in the game and that would not be the most interesting tier list, I'm also going to be doing a partner moves tier list along with it. So I'm going to start by ranking all 7 of the partners in the game, just kind of overall. Some of it's opinion based, some of it is like technical ability based, and then we'll go ahead and break down all of the moves the partners have, and then I think that'll help explain more why I'm ranking these ones the way that I am. It's a dead simple concept, so I'm not going to over explain it. Let's start ranking. So I don't know why these are organized like this by default. Here, my microphone's kind of in the way of my screen. I'm gonna go ahead and do them like completely in story order, because that makes more sense to me, I guess. I don't know why Bob Rio is first. So Goombella. Anybody who has watched this channel for any length of time knows that I am a big Goombella supporter. I like her character, her battle abilities are fantastic, and I mean, she's like a Goomba ally. She's like low-key, just the better version of Goombario from the original game. I mean, don't get me wrong, Goombario is cool and all, but Goombella has a little bit more personality. So I will go ahead and put Goombella S tier because I think all around she is just S tier. Like, her head bonk ability is amazing when you stack it with power pluses. Multi-bonk is freaking phenomenal because it's like the same thing as power bounce, and rally wink is a super useful utility move. The only thing that kind of holds her back is the fact that tattle isn't like technically that useful, because like once you tattle something you don't ever need to do it again, or if you put on peekaboo, tattle doesn't actually become useful. But when you're a first time player of the game, it's fun from like a story / world building perspective. So keeping that in mind, I think Goombella definitely earns S. And now Mr. Koops. God, I love Koops. I mean, Koopa with a hoodie in 2004 goes super hard. He's not as strong as Goombella. His base attack is a single hit, meaning that it doesn't benefit as much from like power pluses or anything. But he has some really good multi-target options, which Goombella just doesn't have. Like, Power Shell is phenomenal early game, and in like early game pit challenges, it's phenomenal. Like, even from a totally casual perspective, Power Shell is awesome. So like, I like that it scales between like casual and like high level play. The one thing that kind of holds him back for me is I think Shell Shield isn't all that useful. I mean, Goombella also has a less useful move, but his damage output just isn't as good as Goombella's. But he's still definitely A tier. His utility is really good, especially because you get him in the early game. Okay, and now Flurry. Oh, Flurry. Still to this day, nobody's really sure how they put her into a game rated E for everyone, because I can think of 2 reasons off the top of my head why that maybe shouldn't be the case, but also she's a cloud, it's fine. But in terms of battle abilities, her body slam attack, first of all, I hate the action command for her body slam attack. It's really annoying to do, just because like you have to line up the cursor and like hold it there. And it just gets really repetitive, more so than any of the other like base attacks for the partners. I don't know why, it just bothers me for some reason. And then Gale Force, her other move is obviously pretty amazing. At the end of the day though, it's like an instant kill kind of cheese move, so like there's that like cheap feeling aspect to it that I can't shake. And then Lip Lock is pretty good, and Dodgy Fog sucks. But overall, I think Flurry is a D tier. Or like her single target is comparable to Koops, but then Koops can do multi-target, and then Goombella is just fantastic at single target. Okay, and then Yoshi. Anyone who's played this game or watched videos of this game knows that Yoshi is probably pretty much objectively the best character in battle. I mean, because his ground pound with power pluses or charges or danger or anything scales amazingly, because it essentially acts like a free power bounce that gives you 4 to 6 hits depending on how you've ranked him up. Like, seriously, that ground pound is one of the best moves, and we'll get to ranking that very soon, of course. I guess my only problem with Yoshi is until you really beef him up, he struggles against opponents with defense in terms of a single target, but then he has Gulp to help deal with that. But Gulp's kind of expensive to use, but is still definitely a good move, especially in Chapter 3 when it's introduced. I mean, Mini Egg is kind of whatever, not that useful of a move, and then Stampede is like the best multi-target move in the game. Logic says this, but I feel like my heart says this. I don't know. I've just always had more fun playing with Goombella than with Yoshi, because Yoshi is either mid or you put him in peril and use Mega Rush and he's a win button. So I'm gonna balance this out, and I'm gonna put him S tier, but below Goombella, because I think Goombella just has the most utility for any context of anyone playing this game. Like any challenge, pretty much, she becomes pretty useful. Goombella has my heart, okay? I adore Yoshi Kid also, and that's why they're both an S. I know that objectively Yoshi is the better one, but this ranking isn't just objective. This is also just my opinion and my attachment to the game. And speaking of the lovely Vivian, God, who doesn't love Vivian? I think that like every single person in my audience loves Vivian. You know, I'd say Vivian is like the fan favorite of the game. And my only problem with her is she's really not that good in battle. Her Shade Fist attack is pretty good because burning enemies can be very nice for that passive like chip damage, especially in like different challenges where you're restricting yourself. It does 1 less damage than like Flurry or Goombella or Yoshi or even Bobbery's like max ranked regular attacks, but the flame helps a bit. Veil is like more of a move that the game tries to force you to use than like anything that you want to use, but like it has some utility. Shell Shield and Veil are kind of similar in some ways, but Shell Shield doesn't eat as many turns. But I think in a lot of contexts, Veil is like low-key, like worse than just tanking the hit otherwise, you know? Because then you lose another turn anyway. So you could have just gotten stuff done and like tanked the hit. So I'm gonna go Vivian B tier, because her regular attack's pretty good. Veil is niche. And then Fiery Jinx is actually a pretty good move. It's a little expensive, but can do a lot of damage. And then Infatuate is terrible. And now Mr. Bobbery. So Bobbery was like my favorite one as a kid for some reason. I think because when I was a kid, I didn't know like how to use any of the badges or anything. Or like not how to use them well. Like I didn't use power pluses or anything. And Bobbery could hit through the defense better of late game enemies. He doesn't pierce defense, but just being a higher damage character, I leaned towards him. And then growing up, I learned that he's actually not all that fantastic, because essentially he's the hammer move, Goombella is the jump move, and Mario's jump is pretty much objectively better in the game. And so Goombella is objectively better. But one thing I do like about Bobbery is that he has the highest health of any partner character, which is very useful when you need to use him as a meat shield or like as a defensive character. So I tend to gravitate towards him for that. Flurry can reach 35 health, but Bobbery can reach 40 health, so she's close. But one of the really weird things that probably nobody's ever thought or said about this game is I find it way easier to super guard with any character that isn't Flurry. Because Flurry in her idle animation floats up and down, like back and forth, like relatively slowly, but quick enough that it can like be an issue. And for some reason that messes with my like visual timing for some super guards. Again, that's like super niche and not really like a valid complaint, I guess, but that's just like a thing that gets in my head. So personally, I like Bobbery better as a defensive character. His normal attack is okay. Bomb Squad's kind of whatever. Hold Fast is pretty bad. Bob-ombust is strong and pierces defense, I think, but it's really expensive, but I do still find some uses for it. And also, fun fact, Bobbery is the only character in the game that has a function for his appeal move besides just appealing. When he appeals, he explodes and then lands back down, and that explosion, just like his normal attack, can actually clear fog. Therefore, Bobbery has the strongest appeal in the game. So, C tier. And then Miss Mouse, last and definitely least. I think that anybody who has any experiences with this game knows this. Miss Mouse is shit. Miss Mouse is like really bad, because when she's unranked, her attack does 2 damage, and then when she's fully ranked, it does 4. And yes, it pierces defense, but does that matter? Like, barely any enemies in the game have more than 2 defense anyway, and when they do, you can just use piercing stuff or items or whatever. So like, the fact that she pierces defense really just doesn't matter. Like, an enemy with 2 defense, Bobbery will deal 4 damage to, or she'll deal 4 damage to. And the difference is, he has other moves that are kind of useful and more health. Her health is like also bad. Miss Mouse is like a super fun character, but as a partner, like there's really no reason to ever use her. Like I almost feel ashamed seeing her next to the rest of these characters, which all at least have something to offer in battle. So this is my ranking for the game. I know that my Bobbery and Flurry picks might be slightly controversial, and then these two being alternated or slightly controversial. But overall, like, most people would agree, yeah, this is pretty reasonable. Because I try to keep my perspective for, like, these tier list videos, not just as, like, is this character the best one in the game? Do they offer the most utility at all moments? But, like, also just kind of the playstyles I like using for whatever reason. Like, I don't like Flurry's attack timing very much or her super guarding thing, therefore that affects it for me. So it's more of, like, a real-world anecdotal ranking than, like, a true scientific objective ranking, and that's just the way that I prefer to do it. And so on that note, let's rank all of the partners' moves. There's so many ads on the site. Okay, let's add a row. So these are actually ranked in order. And we'll go with the same tiers and everything. These aren't like labeled the most clearly, but the yellow is the base move, blue is the like other move they start with, green is their first rank up move, and then red is their final rank up move. I know all those off the top of my head, but for you guys, I will fix that problem in editing so that it's more clear. So, Goombella, Head Bonk, classic. It's like a pretty good move, you know? It's Mario's jump, but for Goombella, which like already puts it in A tier because it costs nothing to use, and Mario's regular jump when buffed with badges is already really strong. Tattle is like, once again, not technically useful after a certain point. Like, once you learn your enemy's health, there's no reason to ever use it again. But just for like what it represents in the like world building aspect, I'll put it in D. Like, as a battle move, it's not good, but as a component of the game, it's good. So I'll split the difference and give it D. And then Multi-Bonk is S tier, obviously. If out of every badge I put Power Bounce in S tier, Multi-Bonk has to go in S tier. And then, not even gonna lie, oh man, where do I put Rally Wink? Rally Wink is one of my favorite moves in the game. I really like the option to be able to give Mario an extra turn, and especially in like late game combat scenarios, it adds like a whole nother strategy that you can use that was just previously unavailable to you. And since Mario is the stronger character than all of them, this can actually be really good. The only downside is it costs a bit of FP to use, and then Mario still has to use whatever resources he was going to for his next move. But like, it's still definitely worthwhile. I'm gonna give it S because I would not like to play the game as much without it, you know? Like, the game, especially late game, would not feel as fun or deep without that move, in my opinion. And then the ones sitting here that are just like the regular character with nothing, that's like an overall thing, we're not going to worry about that because I just ranked them. Shell Toss is like fine, you know? It doesn't do as much damage as a couple of the other partners' single target moves, but it's free, you know? Like, it's a pretty uncontroversial move. I like that with the action command timing, instead of having to hold it left and let the thing cycle, you can just immediately flick the stick and send it over. I've been doing that for so many years of my life, and it's just built into me now. Power Shell's pretty good. It's mostly good earlier on in the game, but it can be useful in combination with other multi-target moves later. So I think that's a fair B right there. Shell Shield, I've never found that useful. I'll keep Tattle on bottom of D. I'm gonna put Shell Shield here though, just cause like, it feels like such a waste of a turn every time I use it. I don't know. This is probably from my biased perspective of somebody who spams super guards and knows them really well, but I could just spend the turn doing damage and then super guard, you know? And that's how the game is made. It's not just me like cheesing the game. Like, I recognize the value of a move for less experienced players, but this is my ranking. So, all right, and then Shell Slam costs a little bit more, but I think is actually, I think it's slightly lower than Power Shell. They're like neck and neck, because it's niche in its use like late game pit, you know, like against elite wizards and stuff. It's pretty good to be able to pierce their defense with a group hit. But other than that, you're usually better off just spending less and doing a tiny bit less damage. But it still definitely has its use cases. All right, and then Flurry and Body Slam. So just her basic attack. I think I'm gonna put it. Actually, it is decent because it can target anything, including ceiling enemies. It's one of the only moves that can target ceiling enemies. Like I mentioned in the last part when ranking the partners, for some reason the actual like action command for it is annoying to me, but in terms of quality of the move, it is definitely there. So like, once you rank her up, she does 6 damage, which is solid. She can target anything, which is solid. So I think that move is pretty good. And then begrudgingly, Gale Force is S tier. Once again, I find it to be a cheap move and generally don't have that much fun using it. Like, my most common use case for it is against Cortez's weapons in Chapter 5, where it's the only move that's able to permanently remove them from the fight. So I'll put it bottom of S because it is, like, for the money, it's very, very strong. Or for the FP, I guess, but, you know, for the money, it's very, very good and can kill a lot of enemies that would take a lot of work otherwise to kill. But it's cheap, so it goes below the actually fun moves to use. Lip Lock is decent. It's like, I mean, like, healing is cool or whatever, but it costs a bit of FP to use. The damage is okay. It is piercing, but it's not, like, fantastic damage. I'm thinking above Shell Toss, because, like, honestly, it's solid, you know? I mean, it offers a lot of value for the money, but it's just kind of spread out, you know? You're not getting, like, all in on damage, but no recovery or no piercing or whatever. You're kind of getting a little bit of everything. Okay, and then on to Yoshi. So Yoshi's Ground Pound, phenomenal attack. Like, probably right there, in my opinion. Like, it does 6 damage by default against things with no defense, but you add in even, like, a couple power pluses or a charge, or, I mean, add Mega Rush, and it, like, deletes everything, pretty much. And it's free to use. Like, it's essentially a free, slightly worse multi-bonk, which is why it still goes below multi-bonk, because, like, by the late game, you can afford that FP, and it doesn't really matter. But overall, like, the usefulness of his Ground Pound is pretty fantastic. Man, where does Gulp go? Gulp, like I mentioned, is really good in Chapter 3 when you get it against some of the Glitz Pit enemies. And it has, like, some use cases later on throughout the game, but, like, it's kind of just outclassed by other stuff. Like, honestly, it's kind of outclassed by Shell Slam in many ways. So I'm going to put Gulp. I'll put it above Flurry's regular attack. That's where Gulp's going to go. And then Mini Egg is kind of whatever. I mean, like, you know, it does some damage. It does the shrink status. The shrink status isn't that strong. The attack isn't that strong. Like, you add power increases and it's a bit better. I'm gonna go bottom of C. It's like, it's fine. You know, it's another thing where it offers a lot of value but spread out rather than focusing on one purpose. But then we get to Stampede, which is probably, like, the strongest attack in the game. It's either here or top. I'm gonna leave Multi-Bonk on top because you can access it so much earlier in the game, meaning it's useful for more of the story, and Stampede costs more to use and requires more setup to be useful. Multi-Bonk is good with or without setup. So I think that's the only thing that separates it, but Stampede is ridiculously strong. You know what I just realized? I totally ignored Flurry's final attack, Dodgy Fog. Dodgy Fog is trash. Not even low-key. Like, my problem with moves like Dodgy Fog and a couple others that we'll get to in a moment is that you're paying 4 FP and executing an action command for a chance to have... Or like, the status guaranteed works on Mario, but then once he has the status, there's only a chance that he's actually going to dodge anything. And I feel like spending time, resources, and just, like, your overall effort in battle on a chance to be lucky, like, just isn't a good strategy. And I would, any time of the day, pick something that would be consistent and is guaranteed to work. And honestly, I think I have probably used Dodgy Fog maybe 2 times throughout all of the years that I've played this game. I can't even remember what the animation for it looks like off the top of my head. And if I've never used it, either I'm just stubborn and won't change, or it's probably bad. I ignored the worst moves so far, which is entertaining, but now we're caught up. Let's move on to Vivian. So like I mentioned, Shade Fist is actually a pretty solid attack. Like, being able to get the burn is good. It's just better than Koops, and it's free. So, like, am I over-ranking this? Am I under-ranking other stuff? I don't know. My list feels kind of middle-heavy at the moment. I mean, her attack is better than Koops' attack. No, I defend A here. It burns, it can hit any target, and, like, Yeah, I mean, Koops can only hit the front slot. Like, having access to burn can help totally ruin wizards when they try to duplicate, so that's nice. And then Veil, once again, Veil's kind of whatever. I'll put it above Shell Shield, but I already stated my thoughts on Veil when talking about Vivian in the previous segment, so just kind of leave that there. Fiery Jinx, it's a little expensive to use, but can be quite strong. It pierces defense and burns, which are both useful statuses to have, and Vivian uses it, so it's got that going for it. And then Infatuate is also F tier. I'm going to put it above Flurry, because Confuse is fun. So Infatuate, if you're not familiar with it, Vivian uses her cuteness to have a chance to confuse your opposing enemies. It's not guaranteed. Each enemy has like different percentages susceptible to confusion. And my problem with that, you're using this move and paying all this FP for a chance to confuse them. And then when they're confused, there's a solid chance that the confusion doesn't affect them. So like that's technically even worse than Flurry's in the sense that hers is a guaranteed move into a chance for it to affect anything versus a chance into a chance. But the confusion status is a lot of fun, so I tend to like want to use it occasionally, but I still barely ever use Infatuate. All right, and now on to Bobbery. Bobbery's regular attack is pretty solid. It's technically worse than Flurry's because she can target more things, but she can't hit spike enemies, but he can't hit flying, and she can hit whichever slot she wants and ceiling. So I think Bobbery's move goes there. Like, it's fine. It's just an average attack. It's like Mario's hammer, except a whole other guy for it. And then Bomb Squad, in terms of like being an attack, is not very useful. I'm gonna put it above. I mean, this one is still not even actually an attack, and these two are like defensive things. And then these two are like bad status things. But like Bomb Squad is just, there's no real reason to use it other than if you're a speedrunner and you're trying to use it to skip the Shadow Queen's invincible phases, which I learned about after doing the minimum turns video instead of before. So that video is inaccurate as to what the minimum turns are to beat the game. But other than that like weird niche use case, there's not much reason to use Bomb Squad. I kind of want to also put Hold Fast in F. Like, it gives Bobbery like a counter to like contact moves or whatever, but you could just do more damage to your enemies if you attacked them instead of using Hold Fast. If your goal is to get damage done, just do damage. Like, this game is not set up in a way that it's really worthwhile to counter anything, because Bobbery still takes the full damage of whatever hits him. Therefore, you just super guard, LOL. And then Bobombist would be like amazing if it wasn't so damn expensive. So it ends up kind of, I'm gonna put it here. It has some usefulness. It's like one of the strongest attacks in the game when it's not buffed by anything, but it's just so expensive to use. By the time you can afford to just like throw that move around, you can also afford to have a lot of badge power and just do better strategies that are more resource efficient. And now we are on to Miss Mouse. See, Miss Mouse, if she was available from the beginning of the game with her base attack that can deal 2 damage piercing, okay, it at least would be good in the early game, useful against anything with defense, but you can't get her until like after chapter 4. And by that point, you can already have Koops doing 3 damage, Goombella doing 4, you know, and she can only be upgraded to 3. And it's like, yeah, it pierces, but what's the point? You can just do more damage with other stuff. So Love Slap, her regular attack, isn't that bad, but it's not good. I think here is fair. I think there is fair. It's okay. Okay, this move is probably the hardest one to rank in the whole game. So Kiss Thief, I absolutely love Kiss Thief. Kiss Thief is a ton of fun, like I mentioned, for late game badge farming. There are niche cases where you could also use it to like disarm an enemy that has like a stopwatch or something that's threatening you, or like a life shroom that's gonna make it annoying. But like in terms of actual practical battle uses, if your goal is to win the fight, it's useless to you. Like, it's worse than useless. It's a waste of a turn. But in terms of like what it adds to the game, it is a phenomenal ability to have access to for playing and enjoying this game just as a game. And I like to keep that into account too when I make these rankings, like I mentioned. So for that reason, for the most controversial pick of this list, I'm gonna put it bottom of A. Like I said, in terms, if we're purely talking min-max battle, I need to win this fight, or like the challenge, you know, you're doing a challenge that is really restrictive and you have to do everything exactly right, then obviously, yeah, it's useless. But I think the game as a whole is way better off having this than not having it. And so I'm going to put it there because this is like an overall, considering the game as a whole thing rather than just from a challenge running perspective. Yeah, Tease is an F tier move. Once again, it has a chance to give your enemies a status that gives them a chance to miss. I think Dizzy is better than Confuse overall. Like, I don't know, this is purely anecdotal, but I feel like Dizzy has a higher chance to make your enemy miss than Confuse has a chance to make your enemy like target another enemy. And this move is cheaper to use, but like it's still bad, you know? Once again, you could just go for a guaranteed strategy rather than this. Now, if her base attack had a chance to make your enemies dizzy and also did everything else it did, then it would be pretty solid. Because then, like, status as a side effect would be way more valuable than status as your main attack. All of these types of moves that inflict status are only as good as the status is, and the fact is that status in this game just isn't very powerful and is actually a very underexplored aspect of this game. And then Smooch is also F tier, but it goes top of F tier because, like, maybe there's a case where you would want to use it. It's you spend 10 FP and heal Mario for 10 HP, but there's so many other options you have. I mean, if you have any items, you could do that. If you have any star power, you could use special moves. Even if Mario already used his turn, you just rally wink back over to him and then use a sweet treat or something, and it's like almost as good. And instead you heal FP. You have a net FP gain from rally winking, then healing the FP back, versus spending 10 to heal it with Mario. So that move is still definitely pretty bad. Okay, and I think that covers it. I don't think there's any adjustments that I want to make, and actually I kind of don't want to touch it now because I just realized that this is like beautifully symmetrical. Like, turn your head sideways and it's like an M for Mario, kind of. So yeah, I think that is my ranking of partners and partner moves in Thousand Year Door. I like to think my perspective on this is a little bit unique compared to like the pure challenge runner perspective, because like I totally respect those lists and think that they do add value to people looking to like play this game at a high level and be like really min-maxy with it. But I like to kind of tailor mine both in respect to that aspect of the game, but also I just like the game as a casual experience too, and want to base my opinions on that. And so, as with any highly opinionated video, make sure you comment down below and tell me how wrong I am and why Yoshi is actually the best, and I'm letting my nostalgia or whatever blind me. And aside from that, huge thank you to all of the Bringle members, as always, for supporting the videos and just generally being fantastic. And if you want to get your name up on the screen with them or get some early access to new Bringle videos, then make sure you go ahead and hit the join button on my channel page. Aside from that, liking this video and subscribing goes a long way to telling YouTube that my videos are good and should be pushed into the algorithm, so if you like what you see, make sure you do that. And so that's all from me for today. I will see you guys next week with the next video, and of course within a few weeks for the remake.